Well, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. So today we finish the journey of color grading in the Photoshop Retouching Series. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reality Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. This is it. This is the end of the journey for color grading in the Retouching series. Today we're going to take a look at one last adjustment layer that has the ability to create an instant, unique look to your images. But when you use this adjustment layer in conjunction with the other tools we've talked about in this series, you can create your own style and save that style to be able to use on future pieces of artwork. Before we dive into Photoshop, if you're new to the channel or a returning subscriber, welcome back to the adventure. If you like the content you find in the tutorial today, then please give the video a like and consider subscribing. New content debuts each week in Photoshop and photography education, and when you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of that new content when you return to the YouTube. So let's finish up the journey today by taking a look at Color Lookup Tables in the Photoshop. As always, to get us started, let's make an introduction. This is my wonderful friend Emma, and you can see more of her work by going to the Instagram account at the link below. Before we dive into Color Lookup Tables, there is one thing I do want to show you in Photoshop, and this is in direct response to a comment that was made on a previous video here in the Retouching series. Somebody asked the question on a comment, is there a color wheel that is built into Photoshop? There is, and let me show you where it's at. So if you come up to Window and come down to Color, when you click it, it activates this tab and you will see the hue cube. This is indicative of what you would see if you came to your foreground color here and click it. It brings up the color picker. These look almost identical because they kind of are. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel on the color picker. This is, the controls and then the spectrum that you see in Photoshop. But if you come to this control in this tab, click this control and then come down to color wheel, you now have a color wheel into the scene. So or into a tab that you can reference. Now this is an actual control that you can start changing colors and things and so forth, but it's an easy reference to look at the color wheel. So if you're working on an image color grading and say, what was the opposite of blue again? You have a quick reference here with this window. You can put this tab anywhere that you like. You can put it in different tab groups or just leave it by itself, but there is a color wheel that's built in Photoshop. And if you have questions like this, put them in the comments below. I answer the comments as fast as I can, and it is wonderful to be able to engage with the folks that watch these tutorials and to be able to refine the answers, to provide answers to the things that you're asking based upon what you learn in the tutorial itself. So, color lookup tables. Color lookup tables are used in cinema. They're used in film to color grade film. It's essentially a way to have a recipe of different things like color adjustments and levels adjustments and lighting adjustments that are all pushed into one tool, a lookup table, so that you can ultimately use that one tool to begin the color grading process. Color lookup tables, the most popular one is to use the combinations of teal and orange colors. It's used in movies and TV constantly. One of the best examples that I know of is the movie Wonder Woman. If you look at some of the scenes of that, you'll see, especially in the scenes that took place in the past in the film, you'll see the background landscape has teal worked into the scene. And then again, every human being has red, yellow, and orange in their skin tone. So Wonder Woman will have orange in her skin tone, and it will pop out a lot. And a lot of times, the color grading process in film, they'll leave the orange in the subject, in the hero, so that the audience looks at that person, but the other people in the scene won't have it as much. But that teal is worked into the background itself. That's the combination. They're opposites on the color wheel, so they can work with each other in that regard. So there's many other colors and so forth, and color lookup tables are used in video editing for color grading, but they're also in Photoshop, and you can use them as a tool to begin the color grading process of your artwork. So let's go to the adjustment window here and click it and come to color lookup. And when I click it, it's going to make our adjustment layer here. And in properties, we have these controls. Now make sure that 3D LUT file or lookup table, this circle is there. And then this is where you would pick your LUTs. So once you click this, it's going to bring up this list. Now, Photoshop has color lookup tables built into it by default. Some of them were made by Adobe, so they're in it. But you can also find lookup tables by going to the intranet, and you'll find them for free, or you can find folks who are willing to sell them to you. And essentially, it's just their recipes they've put together using color luminosity and detail, and they've cooked it down into a lookup table. so that it can be used over and over and over again on any image or in video editing or other programs and applications. So these through here, the ones starting with H, Hackmanite, Heulandite. I've never tried to pronounce it. Heulandite. This one. I like this one because it does an orange teal, and it does a pretty good job of it. The last one in the list, I believe, also Heulandite. That one also gives a teal and orange mix to the scene. But let's go back real quick. Some of these were the Fuji, Eternia. These are based upon actual film stocks, a film that would go into a camera, not movie films. So that when you would buy film, the films made by Kodak and Fuji and so forth, they had properties to them that when they were developed, you could get a certain style. So like one that I like to see all the time is this one, the Fuji Eternia 250D, because if we look at the image, it's giving the image, let's do before and after, you can see that the black point in the image is being desaturated just a little bit. So from a luminosity perspective, we're altering the image with this color lookup table, which is a great way, again, to begin to build some styles artistically. So you also notice here in the list here, I have some from Phlearn. And if you are not familiar with Phlearn, then do yourself some justice. After you're done watching my tutorial on my channel, go to the YouTubes and type in Phlearn, and you're going to find Aaron Nace's channel. Phlearn, he's been running Phlearn for years. Aaron is a great human being, a great instructor, a great artist, and there is metric tons of content and education on the Phlearn channel, as well as he has a website where you can subscribe to it, and there's more in-depth tutorials and so forth. The Phlearn color lookup tables, I probably was associated to one of the tutorials on the website I used to subscribe to a long time ago. I don't subscribe to it anymore, and that's not a reflection of him or that I don't like him or anything like that at all. I just ultimately unsubscribed from it because for reasons, for Heulandite's worth of reasons. So anyway, check out Phlearn on YouTube. You will not be disappointed. And I got these color lookup tables from them a long time ago, and I continue, and the H ones I found on the internet long ago for free, and I just piggybacked them into the Photoshops. So spend some time on the Googles and look up color lookup tables and find them. Make sure if they're not free, then don't steal them, buy them. But you can, again, find some very unique looks, again, from one adjustment layer. So let's go ahead and go back to the Heulandite. And we have a base look. So as we've established in the previous videos in the color grading series, by one adjustment layer, one change, we have made a look, a color graded look. But this is the end of the color grading series. We talked about this just a little bit in the previous video when we talked about solid color. Was it solid color? Yeah, it's all running together in my head. Solid color adjustment layers. Color grading, your artistic style. It can be one thing that you do. Split toning or the selective color adjustment layer. It can be one thing. But I challenge you to start using more than one tool to start building your style. Remember some of these mandates I've talked about, some of these fundamentals I've talked about. Subtlety is key inside of Photoshop. You understand why things work in Photoshop now when it comes to these different adjustment layers we've talked about in these videos. So when you understand why they work, you understand the color wheel. How to start looking for a roadmap of what to do by looking at that color wheel. Subtlety, building it up. Let's do more than just this one color lookup table. Let's start using some of these adjustment layers we've talked about in conjunction with each other to develop your style. And at the end of the video, I will show you how to save all of those adjustment layers down into one lookup table so that you can use that look on future pieces, future artwork that you create, and use that lookup table that is an amalgamation of all the different adjustment layers that you worked on, and then add some more adjustment layers on top of it. Because color grading and the artistic process in Photoshop and the exploration of that artistic process is never ending. That's the joy of it, and that's the challenge of it. I've been doing Photoshop for 20 years. I've been working in Photoshop. I've been creating in Photoshop for 20 years. I develop a style and I augment it and change it every year. And I do it by exploring new adjustment layers, new colors, new ideas. And I save all of that. Now I save it as an action and not a color lookup table because my look is multiple adjustment layers. I like having those tools as a foundation and then working with them individually based upon every single photo. Because I can take every photo, start from the same foundation of my style, and then just tweak it a little bit based upon what I see in the original image itself. So let's explore. So let's go to the first one that we started looking at, I think, was selective color adjustment layers. So again, remember we have every color that Photoshop understands. We can go to the colors and we can shift the balance between CMYK and RGB. If we take the slider to the right, it's increasing the cyan, magenta, and yellow. If we take it to the left, it would increase red, green, and blue. Then at the base, we have whites, neutrals, and blacks. So it's working on essentially luminosity values within the image, so we can start introducing colors to the black points in the image, or adjust the luminosity value of it, the luminosity value, quote unquote, by reducing how much black is in the black point or increasing it. So let's take this slider and let's start sliding it to the left. And what's happening? It's looking like that Fuji color lookup table. It's giving that matte effect instantaneously. Let's keep going. Let's add some color to the scene. So if we look at, and if I turn this off and zoom in, we see that there is some teal that's worked into the jacket, and then on her face and skin, we see the oranges that are taking place by this color lookup table, the Phlearn de Blight lookup table. So let's start adding with selective color adjustment layers. It's common sense, and I mean that with respect. We're connecting the dots. If there is teal in the black parts of her jacket, here with the selective color adjustment layer, as we selected black, let's start adding some of those colors. So if we slide this to the right, we're going to increase the yellow that we see in the black point. If we slide it to the left, we're increasing the blue. So let's take it to the blue just a little bit, and it's making the black point just a little bit more blue. We would need to add just a touch of yellow to get into quote unquote teal. So what if we were to start increasing the cyan that we see in the scene? We're getting a little bit more of that cyan mix, which is getting closer to teal. We could take it to the left and we get red into the scene. So let's take the cyan and start pushing it this way. And we're getting a little bit of that feeling of teal into the shadows that's augmenting the entire scene. Looking at the black point within the image, we can come to the midpoint, which is neutrals, grays, midtones, and do the same thing. So if we do it this way, we're increasing and we're pushing just a little bit of yellow this time, instead of taking it to the left to add blue. Let's take it to the right. We're adding a little bit more yellow and we're working it in. We're grading it in using one adjustment layer on top of the second one, which is the color lookup table. So let's go on. Let's do a color balance adjustment layer. I'll put that at the top of the layer stack. Midtones, highlights, and shadows. Remember, we can work the balances between CMYK and RGB. So ultimately, again, let's go to the shadows and we can do the same thing here. Again, we can start adding a little bit of yellow if we feel like it needs it, or more blue. Subtly shifting it, adding some cyan to the scene. Let's do it in reverse, because we did it with the selective color adjustment layer under the black point. We added blue. So this time let's add some yellows, and let's add just a touch of cyan and see what we get into that mix. Let's go into the highlights and add just a touch of yellow this time and a little bit of red. And remember, as we, again, if you've seen those videos, if you haven't, then start at the beginning of the color grading part of the retouching series, or start at the very beginning of the retouching series. I'm not going to put a card above because you can find it on the channel itself. So in the highlights, we're working in a little bit of red and yellows into it, and it's standing out. We see it in her skin tones, just as we saw in the very beginning with the color lookup table. Oops, my bad. Here, that it was working that yellow and orange teal combinations into the scene itself. So, and we can mess with the midtones here, but we don't need to. And let's go to solid color. Let's add a solid color to the entire scene. Let's stick with the feeling of teal. Let's do a deeper color of that blue. We can even bring it down just a little bit more to get more of that teal feeling into the scene. Change the blending mode. This time let's go to soft light. It's a little too dark to the entire scene, so let's just reduce the opacity just a little bit. And we're starting to get some of that moody feeling into the scene by using teal. But if we don't like it, because colors communicate emotion. So because this darker blue color, it's a darker, more blue, potentially moody scene. If we double click the icon and we come down to orange, and let's push it down just a little bit more, maybe come up a little bit, we're getting more of that warm feeling into the scene. We have a layer mask that comes with it, so we could paint it off the jacket. We can invert the mask by hitting Control or Command and the letter I for invert. Now it's a black mask or a hide all mask. If we paint white just onto this mask, over her skin, her face will reveal this effect. We're building all of this together. Let's use a levels adjustment layer into the scene. We didn't really explore those, but they're pretty self-explanatory. If we come and create a levels, maybe we did. I don't know. I think I might have helandite of the brain. So anyway, so I can increase the highlights here just a little bit into the scene, and I can bring the shadows into it just a little bit more to get a little bit more contrast. And all of this, here is our original image. And these different elements put together are starting to create a look. And it's worth exploring that. Let's go ahead and do this. Here's our original image. Here was just the lookup table. So we're getting that yellow and orange, that teal and orange into the scene, but it isn't enough. If we start adding all of these pieces to the story, we create a style that is unique to us, unique to our artwork. It's something that we like, and it looks good. Now, you can make an action recording you doing all of this, or you can make this a lookup table. So all of these active, you have to make sure all the different adjustment layers are turned on and active, then simply come up to File, Export, Color Lookup Tables. It's going to bring up this window. At the top, description, name it whatever you want. Right now it's naming it the file name of the actual picture. You can name it, you know, David's LUT, and then you can give it a copyright if you want, a date. Use lowercase file extensions, whatever. And then here, under quality, it is my strongest recommendation that you leave it on medium. You would think, well, don't I want the best quality, which is maximum, and that's fine. But when you save this, one, it takes forever to save, and number two, because it's such a big file, and there's a lot going on under the hood, sometimes the color tables in Photoshop, as it's rendering it, can have problems, as well as video editors. So it is recommended to keep this at medium quality, and you don't have to necessarily go any higher than that. Now, here under formats, the two formats that Photoshop, that I know Photoshop understands is 3DL and Cube. Cube definitely Photoshop understands, but also 3DL. These are the same. What they do is the same. They're just different file formats, like RAW versus JPEG. So RAW obviously is vastly different from a JPEG, but the point is Photoshop can see and understand a RAW file and a JPEG. Some video editors require only Cube, some video editors require 3DL, some video editors it's friendly in opening and uses all file types. So you can choose which ones you want to output this unique look that you made in Photoshop, and you can choose both of these, 3DL and Cube, or just pick one. So when you hit OK, what's going to happen is Photoshop, it's going to, the interface is going to change just a little bit. You're going to see an odd window. It's going to put all this information together, and then it's going to ask you where you want to save it. And you would save it to a folder, like make a folder on your hard drive that says LUTs or LUTs or Color Lookup Tables or whatever you want, your color secret sauce, and then save it in there with its unique name. And then you can, I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to save it because that takes time. And then when you're ready, you can simply come back to Color Lookup Tables, come to where it says Load 3D LUT, and when you click this icon at the very top that says Load 3D LUT, it's going to bring up Windows Explorer. You navigate to the window where your LUTs are and you load it, and instantaneously you will have just one adjustment layer here like we did before that's a color lookup table, but it will look like all of these turned on because it's essentially recorded all of that information. It's not going to record the actual picture, it's just that lookup, the colors and so forth. You can use that style on a new image. You can add more adjustment layers, you can add more than one color lookup table. You can have 15 different color lookup tables and make it a hot mess of color if you want to. The whole key is exploration and being able to create that exploration and that artwork by understanding why things work. Subtlety is key, focusing on color, luminosity, and detail, and just exploring your imagination. So that ends our tutorial. Let's have some final thoughts and finish up the video for today. I feel it necessary to have the disclaimer that the things that we have explored in the color grading series, the different adjustment layers we looked at, that's just a small surface of color grading. There's so many other things you can do in color grading. It's worth starting there, and the reason why I started with these is because I think that they're easy to learn and to master, and they give you a lot of ability and control to start developing your style. So I challenge you, work with these. Work with them individually, the different adjustment layers we've explored, then start building combinations. Save them as LUTs if you want to. Save them as an action. Save one picture as a Photoshop document that has all the different adjustment layers in it. And then when you open up a new image, open up that Photoshop document, drag all the adjustment layers over to the new image, and start exploring and seeing how it works together. This is so much a part of the artistic process in your journey in Photoshop, and is as integral as photography itself, as understanding a raw file, and what kind of pen tablet you have to use, and what are actions and so forth. Color grading is the fun of Photoshop. As much as, to me, the fun of Photoshop is extracting an image or using different controls and so forth, color grading is the fun, because it's the end of the road when you're working on an image, to be able to create your style and your artwork that's indicative of what speaks to you as an artist. And I hope you continue to do yourself the service of exploring that, looking at these adjustment layers and building your style and creating your artwork. We'll continue the retouching series. The next part of the retouching series is going to get into, which has been highly requested by emails and people sending me comments, which I think is so cool. And some of the comments have been a little rough. They've been a little Hielandolites, but most of the time folks are saying, hey, when do you get into hair? When are you going to talk about hair? So we're going to talk about hair in the next video of the retouching series. Again, thank you for watching this video and being a part of the channel. If you did like the content you found, then please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. New content is on the way for education in Photoshop and for photography, because I'm able to get back into the studio very soon to start recording that content, where I'm going to explore the gear that I use, how I work with models, simple things like what a color check card is and how to work with it in Photoshop. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified of that content when you return to YouTube. Thank you again, and until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop.